Hi everyone, and welcome to Mission 1820 and this week's episode of Books of the Bible. We've been giving introductions into each book of the Bible in just 5 minutes or less. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this week's book. Now, this week's introduction is in the Book of Ecclesiastes. This is the 21st book of the Bible, and it's also the fourth of the 5 wisdom and poetical books within the Old Testament. Now, the book is comprised of 12 chapters and 222 verses, which makes it a relatively quick and easy read for us. Now, the name Ecclesiastes is derived from the Greek word ecclesia, which means one who addresses an assembly. Now, this Greek term translates the Hebrew title of Koheleth, which often is rendered as preacher or teacher in the English. Now, the author of the book is not directly identified, but there are a few verses that point to Solomon writing the book, such as chapter 1, verses 1 and 12, just to name a couple of them. And as for the writing of the book, many scholars just put the date at around 935 BC, which was quite late in Solomon's life. Now, Ecclesiastes shows that certain paths in our life lead to emptiness. And due to the book's profoundness, it also helps us to discover the true purpose in our life, and that such wisdom can actually spare us from the emptiness that results from a life without God. See, Solomon's teaching that people are not going to find meaning through pleasure or money, work, or even popularity, but through the true satisfaction that comes from knowing that what we are doing is part of God's purpose for our life. Ecclesiastes is a book of perspective, and the narrative of Solomon reveals the depression that inevitably resulted from him seeking happiness in the worldly things. This book actually gives Christians a really good chance to see the world through the eyes of Solomon, who, although he was very wise, he's now trying to find meaning in the temporary human things. Most every form of worldly pleasure is explored by Solomon, and none of it gives him any sense of meaning. So, as you read through the book, take notice that he uses the word vanity 38 different times to describe his worldly pursuits. Now, the book itself can be divided into 2 parts, with chapters 1 through 7 describing all the worldly things that under the sun that Solomon tries to find fulfillment in. The second part is in chapters 8 through 12, which describes Solomon's suggestions as well as his comments on how to live a life. And in the end, he really finally comes to the conclusion that without God, there can be no truth or meaning in life. Solomon has seen many evils, and he's realized that even the best of man's accomplishments are really worth nothing without God. And he even tells us in chapter 12, verse 1, to remember God from our youth, as well as chapter 12, verses 13 through 14, essentially saying to follow God's will. Solomon wants us to know that for all the vanities that he describes in the book, that the answer is Jesus, and that ultimately every disappointment and vanity that he describes has that solution in Christ. Although the tone of Ecclesiastes is negative and pessimistic, we must not conclude that the only chapter worth reading and applying in our life is chapter 12. And this is where Solomon draws his conclusions. But in reality, the entire book is filled with practical wisdom and spiritual wisdom for our lives. See, Solomon was not writing this book to destroy all hope for us, but rather he was writing this to redirect our hopes to the only one who can truly fulfill them and give our life meaning, and that's God. And so with that, I hope that this introduction gets you started into the book of Ecclesiastes. So God bless, and thanks for watching.